The greatest 2-4 team of all time. What is going on, Jet fans? Back another Wednesday. Matt O'Leary. That's Swedish, right, O'Leary?
Yeah, it's so funny you say that though, because my grandmother on my dad's side is like 20% Swedish, so I do have a little Swedish in me. But
I'm really
no,
picking it
the
out.
O'Leary very clearly Irish.
So I think our first stream we did, we were talking about the potential for Davante Adams to be traded to the Jets. Now he's here. I think at the time we were 2-1. Does the Jets being 2-4 have any, or the compensation or what's happened since, change your opinion, or are you still down with the move?
No, I still like it. I will say it doesn't hit the same. If the Jets were 3-3 and they won that game on Monday night, I think I would have been significantly more excited. And I don't want it to seem like I'm not excited about Davante Adams. He's going to be awesome. I'm really excited that Aaron Rodgers is going to be with him. I think he makes Garrett Wilson better. I think he makes this whole offense better, which is a good thing. But I have a hard time getting as juiced up for it as I once was. I think it helps, but I'm just hoping it's not too far gone already at 2-4.
Yeah, being 3-3 and in first sole possession of first place and then getting the trade right after would have definitely hit different. Um, and I put this out on Twitter like a couple minutes ago that when I was in like fourth grade, and I got at the time, and we're like similar age. So at the time, like the PlayStation 2 was like, holy shit. It was like you were a Jedi. It's better than having a yacht. A PlayStation 2. I get it for my birthday, but the week before my dog ran away. And that's pretty
Oh,
much what's happening here. Dog came back, all good, Bella
okay, thank
returned.
God.
But yeah, she's all good. Lived to the ripe old age of 16. Hung with us
Wow.
for a
Okay.
while. But that's kind of how it feels. It's like, man. So I think we all expected this could be a possibility, and you're thinking like, okay, maybe you're 7-4, and you're like tied for first place, and you think a Davante Adams trade could vault you over the top. Like that's how we were imagining it. But at the same time, we killed this team for not doing anything last year, and like, oh, you're giving up on the season, and now they're making a move to fight and try and save their season. So I can't critique it. It's gonna be super. It's gonna be so surreal seeing like Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson in like Jet uniforms. I mean, where does this rank among like Jet wide receiver tandems?
It's got
Adams
to
and
be up
Garrett.
there, right?
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know if I could think of a better one off the top of my head. Like from when I've been watching, like obviously I loved Lavernius Coles and Jericho Cotchery, but I don't think either one of those guys are on that level.
the brief
Keyshawn,
year of Marshall and Decker is but
yeah,
if the Adams could be Marshall, I think Garrett Wilson is better than Eric Decker.
yeah, right.
So
That's the only comparable, really. Is that, and there was that one year. It was only in
right.
2015. They were horrible the next year. So yeah, I would take this one though. I think Devontae is at this point in his career probably better than what Brandon Marshall was, which is maybe nuts to say because he did have 1,500 yards that year. But I do agree. I think Garrett Wilson has a significantly higher ceiling than Eric Decker. But man, that offense was really fun in 2015. And if they can get that or something similar like that going now, I mean, I don't know about you, but I loved what I saw at Todd Downing. I'm not saying that he's going to be, some savior, but I thought he did a really nice job using motion. It was over 70%, which was seventh in the NFL this week, comparatively to, I think it was like 46.5% through the first 5 weeks of the year, which was 30th or 31st. That in and of itself was enough to get me to come back in on this offense.
Yeah, down it, and I think it's similar to like John Simpson is not great, but going from Laken Tomlinson to John Simpson, it's like, wow, this is a bit when you go from like atrocious to mediocre. That is a big needle mover. And I was frustrated the offense only came away with 20 points because I think they had like 400 yards of total offense. It felt like to me, it felt just watching it. It felt like every time the offense had the ball, like we were going to score, unless like we'd shot ourselves in the foot. Like they weren't going to just line up and stop us 3 plays in a row. We were going to have to shoot ourselves in the foot, which we did. Missed field goals, penalties, all that. So definitely the offense's best performance of the year, I would say. And now you add Adams to it. So I don't know, man. Like, you are what your record is. I understand that we're 2-4, but if I try to be objective, which I'm not because I'm a fan, I'm not an analyst, but I still look at the remaining games, and I still think it's reasonable to pick the Jets to win like a minimum of 7 of the remaining 11 games. I don't know, you know, am I
Yeah,
crazy?
no, I think there's a path to 10 wins. I think that's the number. And maybe it is 9. The AFC is a little weak this year, but I think if the Jets can win, 8 games here, which doesn't sound crazy looking at their schedule, I think they'll put themselves in a really nice spot. It really starts though this week against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Jets are somehow favored in this game on the road in Pittsburgh. And like, I get it, they're changing quarterbacks to Russell Wilson, and the Jets have beat up on him the last couple of years, but I'm a little nervous going to Pittsburgh on Sunday Night Football. Like, Mike Tomlin, I think, is one of the best coaches in the NFL. He always gets so much out of that roster. I don't think they are crazy talented, but they're pretty much the opposite of the Jets. They find ways to win while the Jets are finding ways to lose these games. So I think this week might be a little bit tougher than some want to admit, but like, you cannot drop the 2-5. 2-5, that's a steep hole to climb out of. Another conference loss at that point to the Steelers. You got to find a way to get to 3-4, and then after that, hopefully beat up on the Pats again, and then you're at 500 and feeling a little bit better at 4-4.
Oh, they have to win. They have to win this game. In my opinion, they have to win the next 2 games. Like, I'm looking at this like a 2-game season, because even if you beat Pittsburgh and you lose to the Patriots, you go to 3-5, and you lose to the Patriots and go to 1-2 in your division, I think you're still toast. Probably you got to win these next 2 games. And the Pittsburgh is going to be ugly, man. I can already tell it's going to be, whatever, 17-16. Jets down by 1, and they have the ball to try and win it at the end of the game. Like, that's probably just where it's going to go. I will say, be careful what you wish for, but I think I might rather face Russell Wilson than Justin Fields, just because Fields is an extension of the running game, and our run defense is so terrible that I feel like Fields could peel off like 80 yards rushing and a rushing touchdown against us, where I'll take my chances with Russell Wilson throwing the ball. But yeah, man, and Najee Harris is going to be out, but that's no factor because we give up like career games to back up running backs of the Bills and the 49ers. So it's definitely stylistically, it's going to be a very tough matchup on the road. But there's if they lose this game, there's no path to 10 wins. Like, this has to be one of them.
Yeah, well, 1,000%. And I agree with you. I think Russell Wilson, I would rather face Russell Wilson, even though obviously he's accomplished significantly more in his career than Justin Fields did, but just the player that Russell Wilson is now. And the Jets have handled him pretty well the last last year. Did they play him 2 years ago? Was he there?
It was Brett Rippon.
Yeah, that's right. But last year I thought, they held their own against him, and it might not be pretty, but I don't know. It doesn't matter, man. I don't care at this point. If they win an ugly game, like you were saying, 17-16, 16-13, somewhere in that range, you just got to get a win on the board and then, move forward from there. But I agree. I don't want any part of Justin Fields running around because I have zero faith in this run defense.
Yeah, Blitzcrew stopping in says, wondering if Olu is better that left tackle than Tyron. I've wondered that too. I don't know. I think you have to, if he struggles again this week, you have to consider it. I would say that TJ Watt is probably a matchup you want to go with Tyron, just because I think Tyron's been getting beat with speed and his anchor is still pretty solid, where Olu, I think it might be the opposite. Like, TJ Watt would probably just go right through his chest. Like, that's just an area that Olu has to improve for a player who's kind of like a young draft age, has to get a little bit stronger, more of a finesse tackle. But I think if he struggles again, and there's been like, I don't know if I'm in the minority on here because I've been killing Tyron Smith, but some people aren't seeing it the same way. I think he's been pretty bad, man. Like, when he gets beat, he's getting beat so quickly and so immediately. Like, he's getting Aaron Rodgers killed. And Aaron Rodgers has the second quickest release time in the NFL. So if Tyron Smith was blocking for like a Trevor Siemian, Tim Boyle, Zach, well, he would have given up like twice as many sacks. And I can't be convinced he's healthy. I don't know how Keith Carter and MetLife curse, all that. You can't fall off that bad, because in the analytics and even like, Jet X Factor film, like, Tyron Smith had it last year. It was just how many games was he going to give you? And now he just doesn't practice, which I understand he got veteran rest days in Dallas, but it's like, dude, can you have a left tackle that just doesn't practice the whole year? I don't know, man. Do you think it's going to be Olu season? Like, even if Tyron Smith is a full go, does Ulbrich have the balls to bench the borderline Hall of Famer?
He might at some point. I don't think I agree. I think this week would be a horrible matchup for Olu. That's a really tough. Hey, good luck. Your first start at left tackle in the NFL. You got to go up against TJ Watt, which is probably about as tough as it gets for a guy like Olu. This is about like maybe the last game I would give Tyron, and maybe that's unfair because I just said how tough of matchup it would be to go up against TJ Watt, but he looks no different than what Mekhi Becton was doing last year, which is nuts. You can't, like you said, you can't make it up. The guy is going to walk and be a first ballot Hall of Famer. All his years in Dallas, and his first year here, it looks like he can't play. I don't know what it is, but I'm with you. He is getting Aaron Rodgers killed, and that's another factor for this game. Like, I know that they had a game. What was it against Denver? He got hit 14 times. How many times is Aaron Rodgers going to get hit this game? 20? Like, it's. I'm very nervous with how the offensive line has looked, specifically the last 3 or 4 weeks, and this matchup going up against Watt is tough. So yeah, I'm definitely souring on Tyron, and it wouldn't shock me if Olu gets a look at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all figured Olu would play at some point in the year. We thought it would be because guys are unavailable, but if it's because they're just not, they're like a little washed, or maybe the injuries caught up to him, like either way, you expected him to play, so it's not crazy for a first round pick to play. Ian Super Chat says Father Time is undefeated. Greg Zerline. Dude, there are certain things I just knew, like you never bring it up because you don't want to put it into the universe. But dude, I knew that when you have 2 straight years with no quarterback, but a completely healthy defense and like money kicking and punting, I'm like, once this quarterback comes back, the fucking defense is going to start dropping like flies and we're not going to be able to kick anymore. It's amazing. And I don't know. They did work out some kickers today. So I think Greg Z is on, I think he's got one more game as well. I think if he shanks a 38 yarder, he's probably done.
Yeah. And I mean, Pittsburgh is also a historically tough place to kick, at least on that one end there. So I don't know what's going on with Greg. I guess, 37 years old and it just falls off. Unfortunately, with kickers, it goes quick. It's not like a slow decline. It's like you have it and then one day you don't. And there were signs of this in the preseason and in training camp, which is a little frustrating. They did have, Austin Seibert in here who was hitting like every single kick and looked really good. And I'm sure JD would have got crushed if he made that decision to keep Seibert and not Greg the Leg after the year he had in 2023. But, now you're 6 weeks into the year and, maybe we give him a pass for that 50-yarder against Denver in the elements. But I mean, they left at least 6 points on the board on what should be very makeable field goals there. And it's a big factor why they lost against Buffalo. I mean, you could say that maybe if with a great kicker, they're 4-2, but even if you split the difference and say you're 3-3, like that's the difference between first place and where the Jets are right now, which is, obviously massive.
Absolutely. You're benching a Hall of Famer. Yeah, I mean, Dalvin Cook was a Pro Bowler, 4-time 1,000-yard back last year, but you got to look at your eyes and say that he's not it at some point. So now everybody's favorite Jet, Haason Reddick. At least Davante Adams is a Jet, because Reddick probably is now second all time behind Aaron Rodgers of videos produced about a guy who has not played for the New York Jets. I think he holds that second title quite comfortably. And the Jets did. So they said they would give him, well, first, dude, it's freaking crazy. So first he's going to be like a Jet for life, which is absolutely hilarious. That he said he wanted to be like a Jet for a long time. Drew Rosenhaus has magical powers because he talked some sense into this dude, his new agent. And then the Jets said they would allow him to seek a short window for a trade. And after they traded for Adams, they restructured his contract to now where they could fit Reddick on the books. So my gut tells me that allowing him to seek a trade was like allowing him to see that his market is not there, and then he can just come back to the Jets when he comes to reality. That's what my read was on it, and I actually do think he will suit up for the Jets this year. What do you think?
Yeah, me too. I think I know we had a lot of fun this summer talking about whether it was a need or a luxury to have Haason Reddick, but as it is right now, they need another pass rusher pretty badly. The only guy who's getting any pass rush any consistently is Will McDonald right now. And The Jets can't continue to roll out, Michael Clemens or Tack McKinley or Braden McGregor or Eric Watts. They just don't seem like they want to play those guys. And it's a problem. It's a very big problem. And I think it's something that they set themselves up to do now after the restructure of Davante Adams is you can find a way to get Haason Reddick in here. The thing I saw a tweet, I forget who had it. Someone was saying that the Detroit Lions checked in on Haason Reddick, which makes sense, obviously, after losing Aiden Hutchinson. But of course, the Philadelphia Eagles and Howie Roseman, who's an actually good GM, had a clause in the trade where if the Jets trade Haason Reddick to an NFC team, that automatically makes the pick from a third to a second in 2026. So would be pretty shitty if you have to, give up a second round pick in a draft a couple years away for a guy who never took one snap for you in the regular season. So I just don't see the Jets trading him. I think at the end of the day, I don't know if it's like this week we get a random signing, but I think shortly Haason Reddick does end up signing some sort of rework deal.
Yeah, and to me, that makes it almost a non-starter to trade to a team to bump it to a second round pick, because there's no way they're going to give you value that makes up for the difference between a third and a second round pick. Like if you look at those draft charts, I feel like we, content creators, off the top of your head, like the gap between a mid third round pick and a mid second round pick, like a mid second round pick is probably almost worth like two mid third round picks. Like it's a big difference, and no team is gonna. So I'm not. Why would I take a sixth round pick or whatever from the Detroit Lions and then go from a third to a second? So you can't even answer the phone from an NFC team. You don't want to trade him in division. So there's like two divisions you could realistically trade him to, really. And I just don't think the market is going to be there for him. And yeah, the Jets do need Reddick. They need a pass rusher, and he's the best one that's available to them. They already gave up the pick for him, right? And I don't know, man. He probably has a better shot of chasing down Josh Allen on that last play than Michael Clemens. And yeah, he's more of a need than Adams, even though maybe Adams is a better player, but like he's definitely more of a need than Adams, and he probably helps your even like run defense wise. Like I'm gonna assume he's a better run defender than like Braden McGregor. No offense, but these guys are like UDFAs. These are roster bubble level players that are in our rotation right now. So then when Reddick comes in, now like Clemens is a backup, which okay, and then everyone else is slotted down. So he would make a big difference if he's in football shape. No doubt about it, but I feel like a long-term extension has to be completely off the table though for him.
No, yeah, I think the absolute most that I'd be willing to do is maybe add on a second year in 2025. So it kind of aligns with this Rodgers window that it feels like they're working with. But even that gives me pause because we have no idea what kind of shape he's going to be in at this point. Like, didn't have any training camp, no OTAs, no mini camp. Hasn't been, a factor here, practicing or anything through the first 6-7 weeks of the year. I don't know what he's going to look like, but unfortunately, the Jets don't really have another choice. Like there's these teams aren't moving premier edge rushers. Like unless you're calling the Raiders back, be like, hey, we're gonna give you 2 first-round picks for Max Crosby, which I don't think is happening. But they're a little desperate, and Haason Reddick is also a little desperate. So I think for both their case, like on the Jet side, they need Haason Reddick to work this year to make them competitive and be a playoff team this year. And for Haason, if he wants to cash in on another contract, he's got to come back and play well. So right. I think both sides really need each other.
Yeah, with Reddick, like that was my initial read on the situation when we were first traded for him. I'm like, if you want to tack on one more year, they do actually have a decent amount of cap flexibility for next year. Now we'll kind of see with Adams. And let's be honest, like if Reddick just plays for 1 year, next year edge will be a need on the team because JJ, it sucks, man. Like an Achilles blowout is probably, besides like a scary head or neck injury, it's probably the most devastating injury an edge rusher can have. We saw with Carl Lawson, it's not the same as Aaron Rodgers blowing out his Achilles on his non-planting leg as a quarterback. Like your whole game is exploding 270 pounds out of like a track stance. And, we saw Jalen Phillips come back this year and he was never right. And then he got hurt again. So it's unfortunate, but dude, if Reddick walks, like they're probably looking at drafting an edge in like the second round or whatever. So it would be a significant need, but I give pause of giving Reddick any guaranteed money at this point. Truly, I just think he's so unstable that, again, you could risk another like holdout, and it's like, well, that wouldn't make any sense if he holds out. Well, it didn't make any sense the first time, so I don't know. If they do it, okay, I get it. I would prefer, honestly, I would prefer them just to pay him his $800K at one game at a time and then we'll see at the end of the season. Like if he's completely turned over a new leaf and now he's a choir boy and he's not intimidating business partners for $2 million or whatever the heck, then maybe. But I think it would be irresponsible to give Reddick, because it wouldn't be cheap. You're probably giving him like what 20 million or something for next year. So I'd probably wait and see on that. Super chat from Hype says, "What if we get 25-second for Reddick?" Okay, so you trade Reddick and a 2026 second rounder for a 2025 second rounder. What do you think about that?
I don't think the acquiring team would do it.
Me neither.
Right? Like I'm trying to think of the math here on the fly, but I don't see them getting anything close to that kind of value, even if they're tacking on, a pick, a high end pick, like a second round pick. I don't know. If you were to actually trade him, I think it's closer to what you said before, like a late day 3 pick, just because the whole world knows that he doesn't want to play on this contract that he's on right now. He needs a new deal. And who wants to give him that extension? Unless, like, again, if he goes to Detroit as a hired gun for the rest of this year because Aiden Hutchinson's out, like, yeah, that makes sense from Detroit's side, but it makes no sense from the Jets side to trade him, because then you're losing that second round pick for a guy who literally never took a snap for you. So I think at that point they would rather just, eat it and try to figure it out.
Yeah, that you don't typically see those trades a lot where you're like just trading different picks for a different year. I mean, if they did it, I would be like, hell yeah. If I was a Jet fan, I'm like, sure, definitely. But yeah, I think you're gonna see a typical Joe Douglas trade where it's like the Jets trade Reddick and a 6th for a 5th or something like that. And speaking of that, I think, and we'll get to one more super chat, but there's another veteran that we might trade away for a similar deal. Joe and Hype, I appreciate the super chat, man. Joe, same to you, man. Joe Douglas trading JFM. I love how, but Joe, remember, dude, you were killing me when I was bitching and moaning about the JFM trade, and you were like, you can't pay everyone. I'm like, dude, he's good. Like, it's certain discourse, like players have to be either like all pro or completely trash. Like, it's JFM, get over it. I'm like, dude. Let me tell you guys something. When the Jets last played the Buffalo Bills at home last year, JFM had 1.5 sacks and 8 pressures in that game. And he was good against the run. Name me someone on this defensive line that's doing that. Like, the dude had 55 pressures, handful of sacks, good against the run, shows up every week, versatile, dependable, good guy in the locker room, and now you're running out a bunch of bums out there. And he was willing to take a pay. He was willing to, I remember it because he retweeted me. I said some sort of thing about like, wish we could have kept JFM on this new deal. And it was like 2 years, 14 million from Denver. And he retweeted me and he said, the Jets didn't offer him anything close to that. I'm like, nothing
Insane.
close to $7 million a year. Javon Kinlaw is getting $7 million a year to commit. And remember the thing on JFM, he commits penalties. Javon Kinlaw just committed 1,000 penalties all at the same time last night and then was laughing about it. Like it was funny. So yeah, the JFM, we miss him, man. We miss him. And ironically, he got a sack against us too. And he freaking blew up Olu Fashanu to make a stop at the goal. Like he was an impactful, like genuinely, if JFM was on the Jets instead of the Broncos, we win that game. I'm dead serious. Like he was worth a point in that game for sure.
Yeah, I hated that trade from the minute that they made it. I always felt
I remember
like,
you were getting cooked for it. I remember.
Yeah, I was on, I was on the stream. We do the Talking Jet stream. I was like, there's no justifying this. And people got very, very angry with me. And like, I'm sorry, I'm not, if the Jets do something right, I will give them credit and be like, I agree with this. And here's why. If they do something wrong, I'm going to call them for it. And this is something that I felt was very, very dumb because they traded him over money. And clearly, as he stated after retweeting you, they didn't offer him anything close. $7 million. That's like fringe starter money at the position. And he's a good player. I'm not saying he's amazing. He's not elite, but he is a viable starter at the edge position, which the Jets don't have right now, opposite of Will McDonald. He's good against the run, and the Jets stink trying to defend the run right now. I never got it. That's one of those guys too, where like, hate to be like so blunt, but like that's kind of my gauge for like if you know ball or not, like your opinion. Like, he's one of those guys. Like it was JFM, Jordan Whitehead. Like there's a few examples of like what your opinion on that player is. Kind of tells me what I need to know about your football IQ.
Yeah, and I think it's like, oh, it was because of money, and it's like, well, now they're bringing in Adams. I don't know, man. They could have made it fit. It's crazy to think that we once we once rostered, like at the beginning of the year, there was a point where we thought we were going to have JJ, JFM, Reddick, and Will McDonald on this defensive line, which would have been freaking nasty, man. It would have been so good. And JJ, unfortunately, there's nothing you could do about that. Reddick, I don't know if it's the Jets' fault, but it's something that could only happen to them. So I don't know. But yeah, JFM's kind of a bummer. I was hoping that the Broncos would suck so bad that maybe they'd be willing to sell and trade him back to us. But yeah, it's definitely one that got away. Speaking of another one that could get away, it's also like it's like going from Tyler Conklin to like Brendan Bates. Like Tyler Conklin's not
Yeah.
great, but if Brendan Bates is starting, you're gonna miss Tyler Conklin pretty quick.
A lot, yeah, like viable, like pretty good starter. Like you need guys like that on a roster. Like you can't have all superstars, and then like if you're gonna pay, a select number of superstars, right? Like you're gonna have some real shitty starters, and I think that's unfortunately the place the Jets put themselves in.
Yeah. Mike Williams is now the subject of trade speculation. Will NYJ Matt get his money back for the sandwich? We don't know. It's so funny that of course, like it's such a Jet thing to happen. Like we adore this guy. There's a sandwich. We're like, there's literally, I went back to the tweet and the top comment of the video of Mike Williams eating the sandwich was "Make this man a Jet for life," and it's gonna get traded after week 6. So, I mean, and he didn't practice today for a personal reason, so that could be a coincidence. But it feels like maybe he's played his last game as a Jet. What do you think about Mike Williams potentially being traded?
Yeah, I think it's what you just said. I think he did play his last game as a Jet, and unfortunately, it did not end well. The running the wrong route and then falling down, coming back to the ball that's a really tough look, and just it felt like Rodgers was done with him. And like clearly, if you don't trust the guy, I don't know how you can continue to run him out there. I do worry about trading him and the depth beyond that. Like you're one injury away from one of your starting 3 from being in a really rough spot and having to play Xavier Gibson because they refused to play the guy that they were trying to trade up for like all of day 2, which is again maybe a conversation for another day here. But yeah, I think they do end up trading him. What they get for him, probably not going to be a whole lot, but I don't really see him playing another game for this team.
No. I'll check in with you on hype in a second because I did see that as well, but I also have seen like teams are inquiring about him, so I'm not really sure about the rules with that. But with Mike Williams, I would have hoped if they could have found out a way to keep him for depth. Now maybe there's just the players like, okay, maybe he could start on another team. He wants a different opportunity. I understand that he made some critical mistakes, and maybe he needs to have a reduced role, like accountability. I understand all that, but it's not like there's a lot of guys on this team making mistakes. Like Tyron Smith, we talk about making mistakes. Do I want to cut Tyron Smith? No. Do I want to change his role? Maybe if he continues to struggle. And Alan Lazard, who's having a more productive season than I ever thought he would, and he's been a net positive. I'll give him a lot of credit. He's made some really big plays, and he was, he was getting it bad from the fan base last year. Myself, not an exception to that, but he did drop like 4 passes and almost single-handedly cost us a game in Minnesota. And it's like he's still going to get his targets and he's going to be fine. So it just feels like we really can't use this player at all. Like, and then if there's an injury and it's Gibson or Corley season, I think we might miss Mike Williams a little bit. And you don't save a bunch of money by trading him. You're not going to get a bunch of draft capital. So if he is like cool being here in a reduced role, I would like to keep him personally.
Yeah, I'd totally be down for it. I would rather keep him. I just think this is trending towards them moving on, and him not practicing today. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think it's kind of like, all right, like this is it, get me out of here kind of a thing. He'll be, if they don't trade him this week, I think he'll be inactive for the game against the Steelers. So it's tough, but if the trade-off is you could have either Mike Williams or Davante Adams, I'll take Davante Adams every time.
Right. 1 for 1. That's definitely an upgrade. Yeah, and especially since it wasn't like a hamstring, it was like personal reason. So it's like, personal reason I don't be here. What do you make of the hype? I'll jump into this. So I did see this. There was probably like a week ago. I think it was a legitimate source. I think it was Ian Rappaport or somebody NFL related, and they said that a player can't be like traded for. Oh no. You know what this was? I remember. He can't be traded back to the Eagles. That's
The Reddick thing, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
the Reddick for Huff was the discussion. So that can't happen. But he can be obviously he can be traded to all 31 other teams unless it's in the NFC, which is kind of crazy because then you realize the language in that trade should have been a red flag, kind of. Like,
Yeah.
like it's just like Howie Roseman's already anticipating that he's going to be a headache and need to be traded again.
Or Howie Roseman in the first place going, I'll take Bryce Huff and you could have Haason Reddick. And now I know like Bryce Huff's gotten off to a really bad start in Philly.
Yeah,
So
it's
like
been
maybe that's
terrible.
not fair to say, but I don't know, like when teams were historically like very good and have been for a while and have had a really good roster for a long time, like are making a decision and making a trade with the Jets, it always gives me a little bit of concern that, you know, maybe the Jets aren't on the right side of this. And, you know, who knows if Haason Reddick comes in and is big down the stretch and gets a big sack to clinch a playoff spot or something, that we all forgive him. But right now, not looking too hot.
Yeah, just weird. It's the ultimate lose-lose swap. Like Huff is doing nothing in Philly, and Reddick is like not showing up. I think Huff has like half a sack. It's crazy fall off. So definitely, both teams losing out there. Super chat from Hexen says, "What are some possible reasons Corley has been inactive each week since he wasn't part of the Adams trade?" I'd say it's something hilarious. So I was talking to one of my buddies, Jet fan, obviously, and I said, "Hey man, like, what do you think if we were talking about Greg Zerline and how last year he was like money when he was killing our draft stock and now he's missing kicks. And I was like, what do you think if like Greg Z misses that kick versus the Commanders and we had the second overall pick? Like, do you think they would have taken Jaden Daniels?" And my buddy goes, "No, they would have traded up to number 1 and taken Malachi Corley."
Malachi Corley, no matter what.
Yeah,
That's
Malachi
it.
Corley,
Like,
no matter what.
that's just they tweeted that out. They tweeted the screenshot of the Texas
They can't
Exchange. I
help
have no idea if
themselves.
that's real or not. But then they do whatever the One Jets Drive or whatever the documentary they call it. There's video evidence of Joe Douglas trying to call up from like pick 45 to 60, whatever, when they got him for this one player in particular, and they refuse to play him. He has what, 2 snaps in 6 weeks? I don't know. To me, I think, and this is really dumb because if you scouted him, like this would have been obvious. I think it's the route running. I don't think they
Yeah.
view his route running as any NFL caliber yet, which I don't know if a fool like me who could watch it and go like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's probably why he's, you know, a second or third round guy and not a, you know, first round guy. But why not? Like, they can't give him the ball on an end around or throw him a bubble screen or like something. I don't like, that's where I get confused on it.
Yeah, I think this is just one of those things that because they're 2-4, we're questioning. I think if they were 4-2, we'd be like, he's developing, don't worry about it, and we would be willing to be patient with it. But you know, your offense has only scored over 20 points and more than 20 points in, and I believe one game. And you're 2-4, so now everything kind of comes into question. Right. So yeah, it's fair to question that. I think like if I could just like steel man it from the coach's perspective, which as down as we are on the coaching staff, like they could be right. Like he could not be playable right now. Like that is a
Yeah.
possibility because there have been times where we've pounded the table for guys to play and they play and it's like, oh, okay, maybe that's why they were on the bench. Um, I I have a hard time believing he's a better receiver than Xavier Gibson, like that part of it to me. But I understand that Gibson plays special teams and all of that. I do wonder with the Adams trade though, so they don't have to cut. They don't have to cut anyone because Chuck Clark goes to IR, so that solves their problem. But they're going to have to elevate a safety for Chuck Clark and probably move a receiver. I don't know. I think Gibson might be the odd man out because there's no way you're cutting Corley, and I think they might think higher of Irv Charles' role on special teams than Gibson as the punt returner. I don't know. Do you think they just go light somewhere else and keep all the receivers?
Yeah, I I don't know where they elevated Jalen Mills before the game this past week. So could they just keep Jalen Mills elevated with Ashton Davis and Isaiah Oliver with Tony Adams as like their safeties? Like, do they need to add another safety? That would be my question back on it.
Probably not. They'll probably just go with the guy they have in Mills, who's
Yeah,
been
right. So then do they
underachieving.
have to make a move? Do they have to make a move then? Or can they just keep it as they are right now?
Now I'm wondering if I know math because okay, so no, yeah, I think you're right because Clark
Yeah,
out,
because if
Adams
Clark's and
in.
I are Adams in, and they already elevated Jalen Mills before that game. So if they keep him up, that's
So now it's just a 1-for-1 Adams for Clark swap on the 53.
yeah, I would think, right?
Okay, that seems to make sense. Chidi Took says, why does Malachi have to play at all this year? Our wide receiver room is stacked. We just need to accept he's rookie depth in case of injury. So I guess he's giving the opposite approach. What do you say to his defense of Malachi Corley being stashed away?
I hope that he has a Will McDonald like year 2 leap then. That's my hope, because 2 snaps in 6 or 7 games, 6 games is a little bit of a red flag for me when they were so adamant about moving up and getting this guy. And as you mentioned, like, they're 1 injury away from having Xavier Gibson be a starting wide receiver in 11 personnel, which I don't want Xavier Gibson starting on my team. I think he's best case scenario like Braxton Berrios, where he could play limit like special teams role and come in and catch a few passes, but like that's about it. And if Malachi Corley is not better than that, then that might be a little bit of a problem.
Yeah, I'm not losing sleep that Malachi Corley's not playing. I think this team has a lot like more pressing issues, but I think they also could learn a lesson of leaking that he was your 4th favorite receiver and the text and all that. Like, I think it would have been a cool moment if they just waited and then maybe he ended up being active and he had like a breakout game where he scores a winning touchdown, and then you leak it like Malachi Corley no matter what, and it's like, oh, that's so cool. But to do that beforehand, to say you would take him over Brian Thomas Jr., and now, like, I don't know, Brian Thomas Jr. I think might be better than Xavier Gibson. So like it's like that part of it. But for Corley, to me, in my opinion, like the benchmark, the floor expectation is that he should be one of your 3 primary receivers in year 2. I think that is a fair ask. Like, whatever he does this year, and I think the Will McDonald comparison was fair. Like, Will McDonald played a very limited role, and now, he's not Myles Garrett, but he's like leading the league in sacks, and I think I think Will McDonald is playing at a level where it's like you're not freaking out about JSN anymore. Like, this is a good player, and like, honestly, if we had JSN on this team and no Will McDonald, we'd be worse off just because of the way our team is structured right now. Like, we'd be screwed without Will McDonald. We'd have no pass rush. So yeah, we could be patient with Corley. And I think also it is a little, you raise an eyebrow because this team has done such a good job under Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh of finding value on the defensive side of the ball, whether it be like late round picks, UDFAs turning into starters, even guys like JFM, off the scrap heap, Quincy off the scrap heap turns into an all pro. DJ Reed comes here, he gets better, but on offense, it just seems so hard. Like, they have not drafted and developed an offensive starter that's been taken outside of the top 45 picks under Joe Douglas. They have not done that once. And like Leonard Taylor is like a UDFA. He's out there, he gets a sack right away. But like Malachi Corley can't play. So I think it's like those trends. Like, is that a concerning trend to you? Like, that can't be random. I think it's just how the staff is.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we all have a lot more faith in the defensive staff than the offensive staff. And I think that's a great example. Like, Bryce Huff, they found him as a UDFA how many years ago, and he gets a, massive contract and had a 10 sack season, but the Jets struggle to get anything offensively outside, like you said, the top 40, top 45. And it is a red flag. It is a red flag for me. It's an issue. And that's maybe why I'm a little hesitant on Malachi Corley right now, is just because we've been, kind of scorned by them unable to develop some of these guys.
At least he was in the second round. Thank God.
True.
If he escaped the second round curse. All right, ladies and gents, we do have a Mets playoff game to get to.
Yeah, man. I'm pumped up.
Dude, I thank God for the Mets. Thank God for New York. Actually, all the New York teams are actually, I think it was on Monday night, every single like New York, New Jersey area team won. Besides
the Jets. Yeah, Rangers, Islanders, Devils,
Yankees, Mets, Giants.
Yep, everybody
won that weekend. Oh man, the Jets. But so we'll close with this. Steelers game. I don't know if you've dug into pregame stuff on the Steelers yet, but are there any like key players you're looking to focus on, or just like schematically what kind of approach that we should have versus Steelers? Anything sticking out to you?
Yeah, I would put someone else, like a tight end next to Tyron Smith to help with TJ Watt. Like, that would be the first thing that I think of, because he can wreck a game, and I think has wrecked games, many times. And that's my biggest fear for this one. I know, like, offensively, they're going to score probably between 12 and 16 points. and sometimes that's enough for them to win games. But for the Jets, they just have to keep their quarterback upright. If they do, I think between Adams and Wilson and Brees Hall, they'd be able to do enough offensively to get by, but they just can't afford one of those games where, like I said it half joking, but if Aaron Rodgers gets hit 20 times, then they're not going to be able to move the ball, and it's going to be a Denver 2.0 game.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is like, just make sure you don't lose by TJ Watt wrecking the game. Even if that compromises what else you're able to do. I know like that's one less eligible receiver. But I do go back to, there was a game the Jets played. I believe it was the Joe Flacco comeback game in Cleveland, where the Jets were playing the Browns, and Myles Garrett, who's like him and TJ Watt are both like top 5 edge rushers, so same situation. And Mike LaFleur, who doesn't look so bad after the Hackett experience, he parked Tyler Conklin next to the whatever tackle was Myles Garrett was next to, and they double teamed him or at least chipped him like a chip and release. They never put one human on him the whole game, and I was like, thank you. Like this is such a common sense that he just decided we're not going to lose by Myles Garrett wrecking the game. And he still had 1 sack, but it was like he didn't wreck the game. So I think that is a very a good place to start. I would rather Aaron Rodgers have less eligible receivers and a clean pocket and trust him to make a decision or fit it in a really tight window than him getting blown up, because it's just every time he gets hit, you're like, oh, geez, like, I don't know.
He's peeling himself up off the ground. Like he's dealing with the low ankle right now too. Like
he's grabbing his hamstring.
Yeah, it feels like anytime he goes down, you're holding your breath, and that's going to happen at 40 anyway. But just do whatever you can to keep the guy upright. I know that's a very cliche answer, but honestly, like that's where I'm at. That's the biggest thing that scares me about the Steelers, and I think they're significantly better coached. So if they have another game where the Jets are having like 10 plus penalties, that's going to be a major problem.
Agreed. Yeti says, "Oh, Jet fans suck." Yeti. The main problem with the Jets is patience and building continuity.
Oh, come on.
Can I take this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the comment, brother. Look, man, I actually think it's the biggest misnomer that like the Jets or their fans are impatient. Now we're crazy, we're reactive. Like when a single event happens, we freak out and we're volatile and we're all of that. But dude, patient is mathematically crazy. And just from an ownership perspective, Rex got 6 years, 4 straight playoff appearance misses. He got like a Gatorade bath for going 8-8. And then Bowles gets 4 years, no playoffs. Gase, typically when you see a Gase, like when it's that bad, like Hackett in Denver or Meyer in Jacksonville, like they don't even make it the whole season. But Gase gets 2 whole years. And Saleh was, of all the coaches that had a losing record in the 2021 hiring cycle, he got the longest leash. And even like Zach, no team has ever played a quarterback for 40 games that's been that bad, even though it wasn't all his fault or whatever. So, and then even Joe Douglas is like beloved, and he's 29, and people still say we should extend him right now, no matter what. Even if we have a 6 straight season without a winning record, we should hand him the keys for 4 more years. So, it's mathematically untrue. I actually, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, if you want to be historically bad and be defended, there's no better place to be employed than the New York Jets, because people will hang with you. Like, we are loyal. That's the real word you're looking for. We are incredibly loyal.
Yeah, I think you said it absolutely perfectly. The example I was going to bring up was Douglas, because he's on the expiring contract. There's a lot of I would say the majority would actually like to bring Joe Douglas back, and are you going to let him? There's a chance he could hire another coach. He could be on his 4th coach without making the playoffs if they keep him around this year and Ulbrich doesn't have the interim tag.
Yeah, my take on it, I don't think it should be a hot take. I just think we can wait and see. Like if they turn this thing around and they rip off 8 out of the next 11 wins, and then they make it to an AFC Championship game, extend them. Absolutely. Like I think that is more than fair. I just think it's okay to like ask people to earn things, because again, it's like you can't. There's no control group for like the leashes that these guys have gotten. So not impatient. We're a wacky bunch, but man, we are definitely not impatient. But we'll leave it there. Let's go watch some Mets. Matt, what do you got going on the channel this week, brother?
Yeah, so tomorrow I'll have my preview for Jets Steelers come out and just reacting to whatever news comes out. It feels like every day there's something new. So who knows? Maybe tomorrow we'll get Haason Reddick now and just really get the vibes going all the way back.
Yeah, it feels like that news is imminent. What the heck day is it? Wednesday? I gotta stop making videos, man. I made like 40,000 videos this week. Man, I'll talk to you guys maybe Saturday. But I appreciate you guys. You're the best. Make sure if you're watching it on my channel, go over subscribe to Matt's, and we'll see you guys next Wednesday. Go Jets.